So when I'm ready to start painting inside Photoshop's Quick Mask mode, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the brush tool inside the toolbox, and inside the options area, just make sure you have a fairly large brush to start things off here. And I would suggest, especially for an image like this, that you have a very hard-edged brush, because the edges of my little Buddha statue here are hard-edged. I could go with a soft-edged, by the way, and that will give me sort of a feathered edge or a soft-edged selection. So I'm going to crank this back up to 100 here. The other thing too, on your options bar, make sure your opacity is set to 100%, your flow is set to 100%, and make sure you hit the D key on your keyboard. You want to make sure that you have your foreground and background colors set at their defaults. Now here's how this is going to work. If I have black set for the foreground color, if I start painting inside the Quick Mask mode, this adds to the red rubylith, that red overlay. Adding to the red subtracts from the selection. I'll show you what I mean here. I'm going to paint in an area here, and then I'll hit the Q key on my keyboard, and you can see that this area, his hand there and his knee, they are no longer selected. So painting with black adds to the rubylith and subtracts from the selection. I'll go back into the Quick Mask mode. Now, I'm going to flip my foreground and background colors. I'll just hit the X key here on my keyboard. And with white set as the foreground color, if I start painting, that removes from the rubylith and adds to the selection. I'll do a little bit of painting here. I'll do a little bit up on his shoulder here and across his belly there. I'll go back into regular old Photoshop just by hitting the Q key here. And you can see my changes there. So black removes from the selection by adding to the rubylith. White adds to the selection by subtracting from the red rubylith. I know that's a little bit confusing, but I hope it makes sense. Okay, how about properly selecting our Buddha here? Well, this might take a little bit of work here. I'm going to crank my brush size up here. Everything that you've learned already about painting applies here. So I just used my closed square bracket there to create a larger brush size there. I'm just going to quickly kind of go around here and remove the red rubylith from inside the Buddha. As a matter of fact, zooming in definitely helps out here. I'll tap my open square bracket to give myself a smaller brush size to work with. Kind of quickly work my way around. Where it gets tricky is areas where there's shadows. Notice his cheek here. I'll just hit the Q key here. This is why the Q key is a nice shortcut. I can see that there is part of a cheek there. So I'll hit Q again and kind of single click in there with my brush tool. Q again to see how I did. There's also part of his neck right about there. Single click there. This is how it goes. So I don't want to take too long on this. I hope you get the idea here. The great thing too is if I goof up, if I wind up going way outside there, you can see what's happened there. At any time, I can just hit the X key on my keyboard and paint that area back in with the red rubylith. This is why it's great to know your keyboard shortcuts here. So there's a lot of hitting the X key back and forth, and there's a lot of open square bracket and closed square bracket, that sort of thing. I'll switch back to white here. Now, I'm not going to make mine perfect. You get the idea here. I'll leave it up to you to do a really good job. Watching someone paint a red rubylith is kind of like watching someone watch TV or something like that. Not a whole lot of entertainment value here for you. So I'll just kind of quickly finish this guy off. You, of course, can spend all kinds of time making your Buddha absolutely perfect. Something like this here. Now, while I'm going along here, I'm going to mention a couple of quick things. Don't forget, you can use a soft-edged brush if you want. If you want to create sort of a feathered or a soft-edged selection for your quick mask. The other thing I'm going to say as well is you don't have to just paint in solid black and solid white. If you paint in shades of gray, what you'll wind up with is partially selected areas, which you can use to create special effects and neat things like that. All right, I think I'm looking decent here. I think things are looking okay. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to abandon this quick mask here. Well, you know what? I can't. I got to get this little piece right there. All right. one other little piece. There. Okay, done. I'm not going to touch it, I swear. Looking good. That's a pretty decent looking quick mask there. One other thing I should mention as well is you can use your traditional selection tools in combination with your quick mask. So for example, I could grab my lasso tool. This is still inside the quick mask mode, mind you. And I could make some kind of a selection here. And I could just use Alt-Delete or Option-Delete to fill that selected area with my foreground color, adding to that ruby lith, right? I'm just going to undo that, but just keep that in mind if you have larger areas that you want to be able to select. All right, just single click there, by the way, to deselect your marching ants. I'll go back into regular old Photoshop, and there is my Buddha, looking pretty good.